what is PTSD? We're not sure why some people develop it and why others do not. This has baffled researchers over time. PTSD is a psychiatric disorder that can occur following the experience or witnessing of a life-threatening event, such as natural disasters or fire, terrorist incidents, car accidents, violent crime, military combat, or physical or sexual assault in adult or childhood. It's also possible for the person to be exposed to the event vicariously, such as with a chaplain or mental health professional, although this scenario is far less frequent. Over 60% of men have experienced a traumatic event in their lives, and over 50% of women have also, which means that most of the people you meet every day have probably already experienced a trauma. For most people, the reactions to these traumatic events will lessen within the first few days or weeks after the traumatic event. But for people with PTSD, these reactions don't go away. PTSD is characterized by specific categories of symptoms that exist for more than 1 month and cause significant distress or impairment. There are a variety of symptoms of PTSD, and of course, all of them have the potential to interfere with everyday activities in and out of the workplace. However, not all PTSD cases are the same, nor are all severe, and many people with PTSD will not face workplace challenges at all. I feel that a lot of the American public hears about PTSD in very negative terms, and typically in the context of veterans and when something has gone terribly wrong. So it's probably a good idea to answer the question of just how common is PTSD, and also to put veteran rates of PTSD in context with the rest of American society. PTSD affects millions of individuals across our country, and the vast majority of these people never served in the military. Whether you know it or not, chances are that you're already used to working with and around people with PTSD. Almost 8% of Americans will experience PTSD at some point in their lives. And in a country as large as ours, that comes out to over 25 million people. About 8 million adults have PTSD in a given year, and that's only a small portion of those who've actually gone through a trauma. Now for veterans, the higher estimates find that 20% of those who served in Iraq or Afghanistan have PTSD. Out of the approximate 2.7 million service members who deployed, that comes out to 540,000 with PTSD. So while 540,000 may sound like a large number, keep in mind it's just a small fraction of what's going on in the civilian population. What we see in the military community is just a slice of the overall American population, and chances are, as I mentioned, you already work with or interact with someone who has some level of PTSD. I probably couldn't say it better than my friend Sherman Gillens Jr., another Marine, and someone who has dedicated his life to leveling the employment playing field for people with disabilities. What he's overcome over the last 10 or 15 years is remarkable. He said, post-traumatic stress impacts about 7 to 8% of the general U.S. population in their lifetime, which includes victims of crime and violence, first responders, and survivors of traumatic experiences, none of whom we generally regard as powder kegs waiting to explode in the workplace. Combat veterans do experience the uniquely profound psychological consequences of sustained exposure to imminent harm. But studies empirically prove that access to resources and military cultural competency help mitigate those effects, particularly in workplaces where veteran-specific support, such as policies that allow time off to attend medical appointments and creation of peer support networks among veterans in the company, is available. He finished up by saying, Ultimately, a wounded veteran who's fully qualified for a job and simply wants reasonable accommodations and an opportunity to prove his or her worth to the company will likely possess the same extraordinary tenacity, selflessness, and loyalty in the workplace that got him or her through the combat experience and rehabilitation. And as explained by the Wounded Warrior Project, many WII will have injuries that are visible, and many will have injuries that are not immediately noticeable at all. It's important to remember each warrior is unique. Some warriors will have similar injuries, but their reactions will vary. Some warriors recover to an extent that if you aren't able to see a prosthesis, it may be difficult to even know what their injury is. And if an injury is not visible, it does not mean that the injury is any less difficult to endure. Now, although it may sound a little odd at first, I'm actually very lucky to have such a visible physical injury, although I also suffer from PTSD and traumatic brain injury. Especially early on in my recovery, people could tell I had been injured in war. But now I've had 24 surgeries. It's not quite so obvious. This led to a lot of well-wishing, support, and even job offers. As you'll learn, the majority of WII service members and veterans suffer from the invisible wounds of war, such as vision impairment, back pain, hearing loss, mental health issues, and so on, and will never receive the immediate recognition that I received. As further identified by the Wounded Warrior Project, and I quote, "These unseen injuries and disabilities are no less significant than those that are visible. In fact, the non-visible injuries can often cause more confusion and distress to service members because they're just not as easily understood. If others can't see your injury or disability, they're less likely to know that you or what you might need to be successful."